I'm Resident of College Jules Sains, and this is Mark Gilman at I under slash Barnabas. So we're here to do Star Wars Episode 6, which was originally Episode 3
Hmm.
back in 1983.
The
But
last Star Wars movie we're ever gonna get ever.
right, right. That's. Let me ask you something. Is that sort of become a cliche with every franchise now?
I think so. I think so. But I mean, for real, I thought this was going to be the last one that we would ever get. So, and that's everyone has a nickname for a lot of the Star Wars movies, and this is one. Growing up, we just called the last one. So, yeah.
Yeah, Star Wars. Now, Star Wars isn't alone in misleading us with this. There's Halloween, Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street. They've all done this. So
Right. Right.
it's now like become the biggest running joke in fandom of any franchise. It's like, oh, when they say the last one, they're just saying that to get your asses to the seat. So I mean, but
That's true.
you're right. It's just it's weird, right? Because Star Wars, you're right. Star Wars in 1983, they told us it was the last one, but we all know that wasn't the case.
Right. Definitely now. Definitely now.
Right.
Yeah. Grade school me had no idea.
I know it's like because here's the thing too. As when we were all growing up, and you could attest to this too,
Hmm.
we had no idea that the prequels were coming. You know what I mean? For
Right.
like in 1990, we didn't know like there was going to be prequels yet. So when you're watching the original trilogy on television, you're thinking this is it, like for the
Yeah.
longest time.
Exactly.
And then George Lucas is like, "Oh, I got something for you guys."
Exactly. Exactly.
It's like, all right. Uh, so let's get to it. This movie actually, what I like about it most is it starts off sort of how one does. It's in a sense starting off with they had instead of where one they were rescuing Leia, they're setting
Hmm.
up for the rescue of Leia. Here we're getting the setup for the rescue of Han.
Right.
So, what are your thoughts about this, man?
I like this that we just went right into it. And if I remember right, I think they were saying that about 1 year had passed.
Yep.
I could be wrong on that, but about 1 year had passed between the end of Empire Strikes Back and this. So I guess it took them a while to coordinate, everything that was, uh, you know, that they were doing and setting up. And so I liked where you get to see them go in layers, where you start with R2 and C3PO, that they send them in as the messengers, and they have no idea that Luke is setting them up to be Jabba the Hutt's slaves and stay in his service. And 3PO's reaction to that was, classic. But I loved how we started off with, the video message, just like we did in the first one, where R2 was showing a message of Princess Leia that got everything started. Here is R2 um, showing Luke Skywalker, and he looks totally different than we saw him in Empire Strikes Back. He's got an all black suit, um, and he's very, very confident, and you can tell that this is not the same Luke that we left off at with Empire Strikes Back. So you could tell that they were setting up something big.
Yeah, I love the points you're making because you're right. Luke, when you meet him, when he walks into the hut, this feels like a mob boss walking in,
Yeah,
right? It feels like I am ready to kill you if you do not give me what I want.
exactly. And he just walks into Jabba's palace and chokes out the Gamorrean guards, and you could tell this is not the same boy, 19-year-old boy that left Tatooine in A New Hope. So this guy's coming back, and he's fierce, and he means business.
right? It makes you wonder what would, like, if Mark Hamill, because something we're going to touch on when we get into the next set of series is Mark Hamill had signed on for the next three films because
Mhm.
George Lucas was doing them originally, and then
Uh-huh.
Disney ended up buying, Lucasfilm, Star Wars. So
Right.
I mean, here, this is probably, I dare say, where Luke definitely presents himself as the best protagonist of Star Wars in this film
Oh
here,
yeah.
especially
Yes.
from the beginning. Like, because keep in mind, when they go to rescue Han, you're right, they send the droids, then Leia. It's like,
Yeah.
and then
And you
they,
find out Lando's already there.
right. By the way, I love the spy Lando in this, how he's like a spy.
Oh, same here.
Right?
He's still smooth even as a spy. Yeah. He's smooth. He's smooth, man.
If there's one guy who could have played James Bond, it would have been Billy D. Williams, right?
Oh gosh, I never even thought of that. That's perfect.
Right?
That was perfect. He would have been a smooth James Bond. I agree.
He was. I always wish they would have brought him back. Because in the original Batman, he plays Harvey Dent in the
Yep.
1989, with Michael Keaton, but they never bring him back as Two Face, or Harvey Dent. They cast Tommy Lee.
Ah, no.
You know what I mean? They cast Tommy Lee Jones. I know.
Yeah.
It's like I love Tommy Lee Jones to death, but it's like I feel that was really a missed opportunity for Billy D. Williams.
Same.
You
Same here.
know, but so you're right. He's just so smooth, right? He's just standing there like the chillest dude on the planet, not breaking a sweat. He's just looking on, and then
Right.
once Luke comes in there, like you said, he chokes out the guard. I love the interaction between him and Jabba the Hutt. It's
Yeah.
just that whole scene in Jabba's lair. It's amazing. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, I think it's tense. I love seeing a gangster side to Star Wars, almost like you were talking about the mob boss. You know, this is like a little gangster uh, subgenre of Star Wars, seeing the Hutts. And, we had been told since A New Hope that, Han owed a lot of money to Jabba. Jabba was sending people after him. And at the time, you know, with the um, with the way George Lucas made some changes um, in A New Hope, we get to see Jabba in the movie. But originally, we had no idea what Jabba looked like, what he was,
No.
no clue. So there was a lot of buildup for him in two movies. And, Han was trying to lead the rebellion because, the bounty hunters were getting close. Jabba was, very serious about catching him and making an example of him. And then when you get to see him, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's incredible, and this is Jabba the Hutt. And you kind of get like you said, a big mob boss kind of feel about it. That this is like the slummiest scum place, but he's deep underground. Um, I like bringing that element and incorporating it into Star Wars.
Yeah, they really. I think a perfect example of this too with another film
Mhm.
is where what's the movie? Oh my god, Scarface. Where that's sort of how it feels. Where
Oh yeah,
you don't mess with Tony Montana. Well, you don't mess with Luke Skywalker.
right,
So
right.
it's beautiful, and I love how the outdoor you figure there's no way they're going to top the indoor sequence. You have Carrie Fisher, who's looking smoking hot in a bikini of all things,
Yeah,
right?
yes, that's legendary. Oh my
Right,
gosh,
and
yes,
it's just like then they go outside and they're gonna like throw him in the sand pit. I'm like, good lord, said I was
yeah,
wrong.
right, right. Yeah, and that's a big thing with current Star Wars. We get to see Boba Fett, the main bounty hunter that caught Han Solo and brought him to Jabba. We get to see him go into I think it was called the Sarlacc pit,
Right.
and so that's I'm not going to spoil anything for the Mandalorian, but that has, if you've not seen it, but yeah, that has a big part to do with current Star Wars. So it's great to see a callback to that.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I'll spoil it. I'll be the heel here. Um,
Okay.
the bounty hunter Boba Fett lives, shockingly,
Mhm.
which was shocking to see him.
Yeah.
They sort of teed this up in a previous episode by showing someone having his armor, and
Right.
then the Mandalorian gets the armor, and then Boba Fett comes for the armor. So,
Yeah.
and he's like, really, what I love is Boba Fett's heated at the Empire. I mean, he's not happy with them,
Right.
mainly because he feels that he was sold down a river by them, and in many ways, everybody was. I mean, not just him,
Right.
but so that's I'll be the heel. So I'm used to it. My wife says I'm real good at it. So, but anyway, so what are your thoughts on we actually see Luke? We think his training's over at first in this movie, but then no, he goes back and fully trains with Yoda.
Yeah, I like that he was, he made a promise to Yoda that he was going to come back, and you can see that, obviously Luke has been training and, taking what Yoda gave him and, I guess kind of perfecting what he had, but he came back for more. And then, when we find Yoda, Yoda is on his deathbed, and he
Yeah.
told Luke, um, there's nothing more really that you need. You already have what you need, to carry on. And that was such a sad scene. I mean, I mean, even as an adult, the way that Frank Oz moved the puppet and gave Yoda such personality, I still like choke up seeing this little puppet creature on his deathbed, and when he finally passes away, it really hits hard and feels. And then he drops such a big bomb on Luke, um, and you find out why they never told Luke that Darth Vader was his father, because they knew that the only way that he could defeat Darth Vader was if he knew that it was if he didn't know. And so you find out that he dropped this big bomb. Yeah, we kept this secret from you because we knew that you would never be able to go after Vader if you knew that he was your actual father.
Right.
And
There's
so that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I agree with you. There's just a lot of really great reveals in Return of the Jedi that are just jaw chopping. I mean, you would think
Yeah.
they're not gonna. You really didn't really know where they were completely on with the Princess Leia thing. You knew she. eh, One thing I'll give George Lucas credit for, and something we sort of didn't touch on with Empire Strikes Back, they sort of reveal Leia's force sensitivity in Empire Strikes Back when Luke's communicating with her.
Right.
And so in Return of the Jedi, you're thinking, well, is Leia going to be wielding a lightsaber? That was sort of my thought when I first saw it. Is Leia going to be picking up a lightsaber? Now you don't see
Right.
that doesn't happen, obviously, but you didn't know quite where they were going with the Luke and Leia thing, and then you get the big reveal. Oh, that's your sister. It's like, wait, what?
Right. Right. And he leaves, Yoda leaves it ambiguous at first. He just says that there's another Skywalker, and Lucas you can see that
Yep.
he's feeling so many things. And Mark Hamill really sells it with his facial expressions. He's sad that Yoda is dying and that he's dead. He's confused because he's trying to figure out, well, who's this other Skywalker? And and then you can see anger in his face because, you know, they kept the truth from him. And it's like he's selling all these emotions in just a few seconds, and it's so good. That's such a good scene. And then when he talks with Obi-Wan and Luke, discovers that Leia is his sister. And to me, in that moment, it just felt like it made perfect sense.
Yeah, they really paid this off well. I agree with you. Mark Hamill sells. There's no better way to put that. That's well put. And I agree with you. The puppet, him selling, Mark Hamill selling with the puppet. It just, this movie, everything about it really, it sort of felt like the last one. It felt like it was like a complete conclusion.
Right.
So that's why, really, we weren't saps. They just sold us really, really hard.
Right, exactly. So I mean, it felt like everything was wrapped up all nice and neat, and it was. I love a good, I love a good conclusion, and I really, for a long time of the original three, this one was my favorite one growing up as a kid, and I just it's very, there's hardly any slowdown moments in this one. It's very fast paced. Um, the part with Jabba's palace does take up a good bit of runtime, but it's not boring. Um, and then after we move on from Obi-Wan and Yoda, we get them planning the attack. That we find out that there's a brand new Death Star, and
Mm-hmm.
then they bring up a new character. They said the Emperor himself is personally overseeing the construction of this new Death Star, and then we get to meet Emperor Palpatine. What were your thoughts on seeing him for the first time?
I thought he was, to borrow a quote from a movie. I thought a fan film. I thought he was absolute evil when I saw
Yeah.
him. It's sort of like if you've ever watched the Western Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood in it, and
Mm-hmm.
Clint Eastwood walks into the saloon at the end. Here's all these guys that aren't really good, but they're not necessarily bad. They're scum, right?
Right.
Well, when Eastwood walks in with that double barrel, his character is making all those other characters realize one thing: he's way worse than they'll ever be.
Yeah.
And I think that's the realization for Palpatine. He's way worse than anybody else will ever be.
Right.
He's worse than Vader. He's just pure, unadulterated evil, and it's beautiful to see that in a film when you go, "Oh, damn, this dude's bad bad news."
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you think, you know, he's like an older man that's kind of hunched over and walking with a cane,
Yep.
but at the same time, there's something so ominous and dark about this guy that that Vader, our main villain that we've had the last two movies, is very subservient to this guy. He's not going to cross this guy, and even Vader knows his place with him.
Yep.
And yeah, Ian McDiarmid, and just in that first time when he steps off the ship, and he hardly, he doesn't say much, but just the way he walks, there's something about him. And when he gives that laugh for the first time, that was great.
Yeah, I think the reveal was so good, right? I mean, it was worth the wait to get this reveal of this character. It really was,
Yes, it was. Mm-hmm.
especially in this film. And the
Yeah.
fact that, like you said, Ian, he just, man, he's just such a, the actor himself is such a presence and a force.
He
So,
is.
and he just brings that to that character. With every walk, every before he says one word, you're intimidated.
Yeah.
You're scared for your life, and that's exactly what a heel or a villain should be. It's bliss, is what I'll say. It's a beautiful thing to see an evil son of a bitch.
Yes. And there's something to be said about Ian McDiarmid. What little I know about him, and his acting career. I know he is a very classically trained theater actor, and that's one thing I love. And I'm going to tie Dark Shadows into this a little bit. That's one thing I love about Dark Shadows was because the best characters in that show were classically trained theater actors. They knew how to command presence when they walked on screen,
Yep.
and I think Ian McDiarmid does the exact same thing. There's something special about bringing theater actors on film, for the very first time, and they bring that very theatrical presence on screen, and it grabs your attention, and you're like immediately drawn in, and you just they bring so much to the character, and I love it.
Yeah, I agree. Like 1000% everything you just said. Theater actors, they know how to posture their body, their face. They know how to sell with their features, everything before they can ever before they speak. Really,
Right.
Fred did this, like you said, in Dark Shadows. So that's a great point, man. So what
Thanks.
what did you think of the Ewoks?
The Ewoks, I may be like alone in this because I didn't find out until a few years ago when I started watching some YouTube videos and people talking about Return of the Jedi. I had no idea that a lot of people had so many problems with the Ewoks, but I always loved them. I thought they were adorable, but I thought they were fierce too. And I was watching something. It was a documentary about the making of Return of the Jedi, and George Lucas stated that he and I'm jumping ahead a little bit with the Ewoks. When they had the battle against the Empire, the Ewoks fighting off against the stormtroopers, that he mirrored a lot of what happened with the Viet Cong in Vietnam, how they were a more primitive group of fighters, and they took down a lot of mighty armies from other countries, and they were more savage, they were more reckless, like the Ewoks, and they were patterned after the Viet Cong. So when I look at it in that perspective, I can definitely see what George Lucas was drawing from. But I mean, on the surface, I love the Ewoks, and I actually have a T-shirt with Wicket, the main Ewok. His face, covers the whole shirt. But I've always loved the Ewoks.
I think they're one of the cutest but yet toughest characters in the entry here.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't,
Yeah,
if Yoda can something Yoda, size does not matter. It's not about your
that's
size.
true.
It's not about your size. It's about what you can do on the inside. And I think
Exactly.
that's something they set up well with Yoda, but really bring home with the Ewoks, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're small, but they're fierce. They're these fighting warriors that are just furry and cute, and they love to hug, Harrison Ford's leg.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. They even broke Han, and he gave them a hug and smiled. So if you can get to that part of Han Solo, you're definitely cute. So
Yes,
yeah,
but
I think they were just as tough as they were cute. And I love the scene where you know they where Luke Skywalker used the Force on C-3PO to kind of scare them into I guess scare them into submission to pay attention, and C-3PO telling the story of the rebellion against the Empire in their language. That was just a really cool scene, watching that all unfold and seeing the Ewoks turn and swearing to help them, and then they were all part of the Ewok tribe as honorary members. That was pretty cool.
right, right. It just there's a lot of good just nostalgia in this film, especially with the Ewoks. So
Right.
I gotta ask you, and I know I asked you this in our previous video when we did Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, but many fans have been torn with the whole Harrison Ford. Han Solo should have died in Empire Strikes Back. Han Solo shouldn't have died. Where are you on that?
I'm glad that he lived,
Hmm.
because and we'll get into this in one of the movies in the sequel trilogy. I'm glad that he lived because I think that it would have been a really big disservice to Han Solo because I think he had a lot more to offer. And I live in a world, you know, every day where Han Solo dies.
Right.
And I've seen a bunch of movies where Han Solo, quote unquote, dies.
Right.
And I think it's great to be able to see, hey, we're going to get all of his friends together and we're going to go save him because, there's still, more for him to do. He's not done yet. And I'm glad that he lived because that he lived because I'm on the opposite side of bereavement. If we can save the good guys, then I'm all for that. But that's just my opinion.
I hear you. It's not that I mind that he lived. It's what
Mm-hmm.
it's what they did with him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I get
Right.
like they're wanting. I think about the character we first met, and really, I guess I'll put it this way: no character underwent more change than maybe Han Solo himself,
Mm-hmm.
and he went from being a gun runner, stealer, thief, con man, playboy,
Right.
playboy,
Right.
and by the second film, he's still some of that. There's still some of that, but he's also falling in love with Princess Leia. And by the end
Yeah.
of Empire Strikes Back, she tells him, "I love you," and like a pimp, he says, "Well, I know." And
Right.
the third film, she saves him. And what I was honest to God waiting for after they save his ass was for
Yeah.
him to look at them and say, "Well, I'll see you," and just leave.
Right. Right.
But no, he. I get why he stays with. He's in love with her. That's sort of the message. Like he's in love with Leia.
Right.
And I guess what I'd say is all the things they had Harrison Ford's character do, they could have had Chewbacca do or Billy D. Williams' character do. Other than kiss Princess Leia. But I, I guess I just don't see the big point of what they did with him in Return of the Jedi. I guess that's more,
Right.
if you really want to point to where that's more paid forward, I would say that's Force Awakens. You know what I mean?
Right.
I would say Force Awakens more gave Han his identity back, but yet kept what a lot of what they did with Return of the Jedi. He still cared, but he was still the
Mm-hmm.
same smooth talking, gun running playboy guy.
Right. Right.
So I don't. Again, I don't hate the decision. I guess I'm in the middle, but I don't love the decision that they let him live because of what they did with him.
Right. Yeah, he was. I guess where they promoted him to a general, and
Yep.
they. I loved how they had everyone had a final plan of attack. This was. The rebels were kind of smaller now, and so they had to. This was all or nothing, and so they uh, picked they picked Lando to lead an attack on the Death Star, but they had to have a ground team to disable the shield that was around the Death Star on the moon of Endor. And I like that that they all split up into groups and Han led the party. Um, I think for me, his main character arc was in the second one, and in Return of the Jedi, it was time for Luke to have his main character arc. And but I definitely understand what you're saying. Your points are extremely valid. And you're not alone in the way that you feel.
Again, I feel where Return of the Jedi sort of, again, you're right. It's Luke's character. Let's not be fooled, and we're not trying to fool anybody. This is Return of the Jedi is Mark Hamill's film, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, but what I would say is what Force Awakens does really well is it brings Han's character back into the fold of things. And I
Right.
actually like Han's, character 1, 2. If you ask me where do I rank Han Solo's character, I'd go 1, 2, Force Awakens, and then Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Simply because I prefer how he was in Force Awakens more so than in Return of the Jedi. But
Right. He went back to being a smuggler.
right. I'd rather him
Right.
be the free, like, look, you could this. I'm gonna sound like a chauvinist person saying this, but I'm not. But you can knock up Princess Leia and leave her.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I know how that's gonna sound with some people, but it did because I mean, it's not like the dude was like the most responsible person to begin with.
Exactly.
This
He
is
just always
right.
made everything up as he went along.
That's beautiful, right? I love that.
Yep.
What were your thoughts on we get to we get Luke to the Death Star. He goes there knowing that he tells Leia, and then he goes to the Death Star. And what are your thoughts between here's James Earl Jones voicing Darth Vader once again. Beautiful performance. Him
Yeah.
and just Mark Hamill just sell beautiful on that Death Star.
Yeah. I loved when they had their first meeting in that
Mm.
hallway. It was right before they were taking Luke to the Death Star, and Luke was saying, um, what was it? No, Darth Vader said something to him, and he said, "I know, Father." And Luke acknowledged that for the first time, and then you see Darth Vader say, "So, you've accepted the truth." And Luke said, "I've accepted the truth that you were once Anakin Skywalker, my father." And then Darth Vader quickly turns and says, "That name no longer has any meaning for me." And like you said, James Earl Jones' voice work is fantastic in this scene. And, Luke keeps driving it home that, it's the name of who you really are, and you've only forgotten. He said, "I can feel that there's good in you." He said, "That's why you could have killed me, but you didn't." And he said, "And that's why you won't bring me to the Emperor right now and just turn me over to him. That if you wanted me dead, you could have killed me." And you can really see, even though you can't see any facial expressions, the way that James Earl Jones does his voice, you can tell that Darth Vader is having some conflict, that there's something going on inside him that he's really struggling with. And you see him kind of walk off to the side and just kind of look out into the distance, and his breathing gets really labored and heavy. You can tell there's something going on deep inside him.
I agree. I love every point you just made because you're right. There's between him looking at Luke, him looking away from Luke. There's there you can just look at Darth Vader's metal body or robotic body, if you will, and you can tell it screams confliction.
Yeah.
Like it's screaming at you, and it's beautiful. It's just
Yes, it
perfect
is.
sell job by everybody involved. James Earl Jones, the actor inside the suit, just
David Prowse. Yeah.
all of it. And I love when they get to the Emperor Palpatine, and I mean this with all due sincerity and fun because villains. We've talked about how evil Palpatine is. If I had to describe one word for Palpatine, it would be dick. Like,
True. Yes, very much so. That's perfect in all caps.
right?
Yes, yes, very much so. And that's one thing that he really does in this scene, because he lets Luke see, um, that they haven't been able to disable the shields around the Death Star, and then he releases all his fighters, and Luke is watching the rebellion just being killed, off one by one, and there's hardly anything left. And that's one thing that the Emperor does. He breaks down, you know, all your resolve to where it just seems like turning to the dark side is the only way that you can save anyone. And he kept blackmailing Luke from the very beginning that I'm looking forward to completing your training. And he said,
Yep.
in time, you're going to call me master. And I loved how slowly but surely he kept chipping away at Luke, at, all the resolve he had, all the faith in the good side of the Force, the light side. And he made him think that, turning was the only way that he could stop his friends from dying, and that he would call off the attack if Luke would turn to the dark side. And that's such a great way that Palpatine sets everything up. The greatest hero that we see, he can break him
Yep.
in minutes.
I'm going to throw a little theory at you with Star Wars Return of the Jedi. The Return of the Jedi isn't so much Luke Skywalker, it's the return of Anakin Skywalker in Darth Vader's metal body.
I agree.
Because when Luke does get the lightsaber and he goes to strike Palpatine, well, who stops him? Vader, you could say Vader, but I dare say that's Anakin preventing him from doing the one thing that would have turned him dark side, because it would have been.
I agree 100%.
It would have been an act of revenge. You know what I mean? And that's
I've
not.
said.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's the one thing a Jedi doesn't do is revenge, and he was stopping him from doing it.
I agree. I've said that for years, and you're the first person that's agreed with me on that. That I got the vibe that this was Anakin, and that he was, I guess, pulling a smokescreen because Palpatine was so focused on Luke and focusing all his attention and energy on Luke, that I think that Anakin was already coming out, and that Vader was already making that change, and he did that to stop Luke from making the same mistake that he did.
Yep.
I think that he did that out of love for Luke, which I know some people have said that they think that it was, to protect Palpatine from being killed, that he was protecting his master. But I'm on a different hill than that. I think that he was doing it to protect Luke, and that the fight was just a distraction to get Luke angry and focused on him and take his mind off of what Palpatine was saying.
Yeah, I do too. I think that, again, Anakin himself is somebody who his mind was clouded because he had a lot of hurt in his life.
Yeah.
Well, here's his son who he knows is alive. His daughter is alive, and he even says that during the fight that they do have. But here's a guy who didn't have to fight his son. He could have let Luke strike at the Emperor, and he doesn't. Not to me, I agree, not to protect his master, but to save his son's soul in every way.
Exactly.
I agree. I actually love this lightsaber fight better than the one in Empire Strikes Back. I love the one in Empire Strikes Back, but this one here, I will say Return of the Jedi probably has one of the best choreographed, lightsaber fights between Vader and Luke.
Right. And I think that, Vader knew all the right buttons to push to keep Luke focused on him and angry with him.
Yep.
And saying, threatening that he was going to turn Leia to the dark side. I think that was just all a ploy to get Luke to come out and, to fight him. And I love that one scene where Vader's talking and Luke is hiding, and you can see Luke just, you can see him thinking, and like one half of his face is light, the other half is shadow, and you can tell that he's like kind of caught between, the light side and the dark, and Vader's just empty, saying, like, repeating what the Emperor says, saying, give yourself to the dark side. But he's just doing, to me, I think he was just doing it as a means to keep Luke distracted and to focus on his voice and not the Emperor's. And Yeah, I agree that there was a lot of energy and just raw emotion um, to that fight. It was just very hack and slash. It wasn't like the prequels where it was a lot of technique and spinning and a lot of martial art looking fight scenes. This was just something that was just raw and just very hack and slash, and you could feel a lot of emotion in this.
Yeah, the the prequels are pretty, or what we call
Mhm.
pretty violent. This is
Right.
rough, raw, raw violent, and it's
Mhm.
beautiful to see. I agree with you. It's so well choreographed and so well done. And what are your thoughts about this? Is where we first see the lightning bolts come out of the Emperor's hand in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
film. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought that was crazy. I can't remember because it was such a long time ago that I watched the movie, but I've watched this so many times, and you know, thinking that we're usually used to seeing the Force,
Hmm.
and Ray will explain this in one of the future movies. Luke asks her what the Force is, and she says it's something that uh, helps you move rocks and makes things float. And that's pretty much all that we've seen at this point that the Force can do, and that it can move things and whatever. And the Emperor doesn't need a lightsaber; he can use this lightning, and it just like sends Luke reeling back and puts him on the ground.
You
And the way he's just like mercilessly shocking and shocking and shocking, where you can see like the bones and the skull and everything of Luke while he's just like moving closer and closer, and the shock beams are becoming more intense, and um, he cries out to Anakin to please save him, and he's just Vader has lost his hand at this point again, and he is just staring and watching Luke go through this, and then um, again, it's just the body language. Vader doesn't say a word, or in the original version of the trilogy, um, Vader doesn't say a word, and he doesn't have to. You can see that conflict again, and then he just turns towards the Emperor and picks him up and throws him down into the ventilation shaft. And oh my gosh, that still just like makes me want to stand up and cheer every time I see that scene.
Yeah, Vader's whole thing, you're right, has been confliction ever since Luke's come aboard. And it's been playing on him, playing on him. We saw the lightsaber, him stopping him from killing Palpatine to save his
Mm-hmm.
son from the dark side. Now you got to save your son from Palpatine himself from death. And
Mm-hmm.
that's to me is was damn it, you know what? That's my kid. You're not doing this again.
Right,
And I
right.
love it. I agree with you. It's a beautiful sequence, and I love how Luke is trying to help his dad out of, you know,
Mm-hmm.
out of the Death Star. Things are going down. The battle's now being lost by the Empire. The rebellion's winning, and it's one of the most surreal moments where you have Vader is all but dead, and he's laying on the ground.
Right.
He goes, and you got it, and he tells him to take his helmet off. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the best moments ever in a sequel I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and it's always fun, and you and I love horror movies,
Right.
and when you see someone's face reveal, that's like Jason's face reveal, or when Laurie pulls the mask off of Michael in Halloween, and you get that face reveal, that's just a moment that you tense up for, and you want to see what's underneath that mask, and seeing just a normal man and him smiling at Luke and telling him that you were right, and tell your sister that you were right about me, and you see him smile, and it's great. that's a good moment. I really really enjoyed that.
Yeah, funny you said that. One of my favorite Jason reveals is when Jason takes Manhattan, the
Hmm.
game he kicks the boombox, and
Oh yeah.
the gang members are like, "Hey," and he turns around and they're like pulling out knives. He lifts up the mask and like, we're cool, we're cool," and I
Yeah.
laughed my ass.
I love that part. That's probably my favorite part of that movie. I loved it.
It's like, yeah, yeah, not today.
Yeah, exactly. We're cool, brother.
We're
But
cool. Yeah.
yeah, and I've heard a lot of people say that they think that Darth Vader should have lived, but really, I think he had his redemption arc, and I don't think that um, I don't think that he could have gone back and faced people as Anakin with as many people, thousands and thousands of people that he killed. I just don't be able. I just don't think that he would be able to go back and face everyone else and then be okay and really take him seriously that he's no longer with the dark side and that everything's okay. I think that he had a good redemption arc, and I think it ended where it should have.
I'm with you. His redemption is the fact that he's a ghost, that he's a
Yeah.
Jedi ghost. I think
Hmm.
that's the best way you can describe his redemption arc. That
Right.
if he were to live, it would have just been a big mess to try
Yeah.
to redeem that character right then and there. You're right.
Yeah.
He has spent years helping track down and kill not just other Jedi, but innocent people. And
Right.
if he
Destroying
lived,
planets and whole systems. Yeah.
right. So I agree with you. If he lives, it's a mess. Now he dies. He's the martyr. He's the martyr he really needed to be, and should have been when he was a Jedi Knight, really. So
Exactly.
the redemption, I agree with you. It's there. It's beautiful. The Jedi, the Ghost with Yoda and Obi-Wan is really, really well done. Is there
Hmm.
anything you want to add to the movie, sir? Else?
Um, I really think that everything in this movie, really concluded well. I thought it wrapped up so nicely, and I loved seeing, Luke being so optimistic that he succeeded, and even in the darkest of people, there is still some light that can be reached. And I love that optimism about Luke, and that's something that we'll talk about in the sequel trilogy when we get there.
Yeah.
I loved how even though Luke was the last Jedi, that you got a sense that he was going to be you know finding a lot more people and training more Jedi, and he was just the ultimate symbol of optimism and hope in the galaxy. And I really held on to that for a lot of years. Luke Skywalker was um, definitely a model character, for me being optimistic, and you just always try to look for the good in people, um, no matter how evil they are and how awful they seem to be on the surface. It's he was someone that taught you a good lesson to always dig a little bit deeper and try to reach those people.
Is Luke the greatest sci-fi protagonist ever? You think?
Uh, that's a good question. Uh, I I can't say yes to that now,
Right.
but um, I think he's definitely one of the best.
It's so hard, right? Because it really is because they continued Star Wars, and
Uh-huh.
Luke, he's not so much here. He's putting over the heroine. He's helping her train, which makes him more of a
Right.
hero in a sense to being a trainer. But
Hmm.
if I had to say was he the greatest, science fiction, I definitely would say he's top two, top three,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
to me, number one is Decker from Blade Runner, but played by
Hmm.
Harrison Ford.
Oh
Actually,
yeah, there you go. There you go. Very good point. Very good point.
that's my number one. But
Hmm.
it's crazy because there's a lot of characters out there who you could point to, but he's definitely right behind Decker to me as the great as because again we've talked about he's almost like a mob boss, but
Hmm.
just the whole performance is amazing. So
Hmm. And I love that he's very relatable because anybody can be a Luke Skywalker. You want to do something better. You want to just like he did in A New Hope. Um, he was just a guy that was stuck on out in nowhere and not doing anything with his life, and he wanted to do something better. He wanted to be bigger. He wanted to help people. He wanted to be so much more, and he knew that there had to be more to his life and more of a purpose than just staying on the farm with his aunt and uncle out in the middle of nowhere on a planet that was just nothing but sun and sand. And I think that's a feeling that everybody can relate to. There's got to be, you always want something bigger, something better and important in your life. And I think that's one thing that's so great about Luke Skywalker is that at some point everyone can relate to him, and that if you find something you want to do, you work at it hard, and you may make mistakes along the way, but you fall and you keep going, you don't give up, then you become what you wanted and even more. And that's something I think that's a struggle that everybody that's ever lived
yep.
has dealt with. And that's one reason why I love Luke Skywalker so much. And the way his story wrapped up here, it was, to me, it was a perfect way to wrap up. And I really love this movie.
Yeah, I what do you give this 1 out of 10?
For me, I think I give this one. Um, I gotta say 10 out of 10. I loved every minute of it. I know a lot of people have problems with this one,
Right.
but for me, I love the way it ended. So I'm just gonna go full 10 out of 10.
I'm gonna give a 9 out of 10,
And that's fair.
only to be indifferent. Just to be indifferent. But I think the one thing I take away most from
Hmm.
Return of the Jedi from the Star Wars trilogy, if they
Hmm.
would have ended it where they did, I would have had no problem with it. It just
Right.
it felt so completed. It felt so right. It felt so good.
Hmm.
I can't wait to talk to Force Awakens with you because I,
Same.
I actually do love the Force Awakens of
Same.
what they did because they literally, I mean, they turned a lot of things in many ways on their ear, and
Hmm.
just when you think they're gonna go one direction, oh no, we're gonna do this. I think they did
Right.
right. There's so many things to get into with that, but I do gotta ask you something before we go.
Sure.
Godzilla or King Kong? Who you taking?
I'm picking Godzilla
There you
always.
go. Watch out for
I'm
that.
definitely a house divided on that one, but I'm definitely Team Godzilla.
I could see a line in your house now, and one side stand on one, and one standing on the other.
Hmm. Yeah, I have. My wife is Team Kong.
Yeah.
Um, I think my stepson just wants a good movie, and my stepdaughter is not really into monster movies, so I don't think she cares either way. But as far as my wife and I think we're very much divided on the issue, and we each we're ready for this movie. I can't wait.
Just remember the pre-fight rules: no eye gouging, no hair pulling.
Right, right. Oh, you don't have to tell me, tell her. So yeah,
I'm just a referee, man. Don't harm me. But
exactly, exactly.
now,
But yeah, I'm hoping we've all got our vaccines, so I'm hoping that that we'll get to be able to see
Right.
this in a theater now. So we haven't been to a theater in over a year, so
Right.
I'm hoping now that some things are going to slowly and very carefully turn back to normal.
I love the fact now we're gonna get a special character in this. I'm sure pretty much everyone knows Mecha Godzilla is gonna be in this, but
Hmm.
and I'm looking forward to see how they handle the character. I think the
Yeah.
one thing, if you go watch that old Toho movie of Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla for the first time, and no one knew that it was a fake Godzilla, the
Hmm.
one thing that gets pulled off nicely in that is one of Godzilla's best monster friends gets killed, but in the
Yeah.
act of sort of exposing it's not the real Godzilla. So
Right.
that's something I'm curious to see if they're going to try to pull off with this. But I'm with
Hmm.
you. I'm on your side, man. Team Godzilla all the way. Though I love
Yeah.
King Kong, and I actually just bought the Blu-ray of the 1976 movie King
Hmm.
Kong with Jeff Bridges. But
Nice.
I'm excited for this movie too. I hope that we do. I agree with your stepson. I hope we get a good movie.
Right. Right. But yeah, that was what I was thinking when it was showing in the trailer that Godzilla was attacking people, and Mecha Godzilla has always been my favorite Godzilla villain.
Right.
Um, Not necessarily my favorite Godzilla movie, but he's my favorite villain. So I'm kind of wondering if that's what they're going to do, if they're going to um, kind of repeat what they did with the original movie, where Godzilla was killing Anguirus, like you were talking about, and I think it showed him like ripping open his jaw or something.
Right. Yep.
And yeah, so I'm wondering if that's what they're going to do with this one. But I think it's going to be spectacular, and just it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'm gonna hold my breath for whenever they do the another Shadow movie. So I
Hmm.
know there's a book coming out in the fall, but I'm holding my breath
Right.
for another Shadow.
Same.
That's what I'm
That's going
holding.
to be great.
Right. I think there's a lot of potential for them to follow Godzilla versus Kong, and I'm excited for that to see where they go after this. But I'm with
Same.
you. I think we're just also excited for this big, huge fight and how they tell the story, really.
Hmm.
So,
Same. And if it's a dumpster fire, I just want it to be a fun dumpster fire to look at. I don't care.
if it's a dumpster fire, just
As long
add
as
the
I'm having fun,
gasoline.
that's all that matters. Exactly.
Just, no one bring that. You with the hose. Drop that right now.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. I just want to have a good time and be entertained. That's all I ever ask for a movie.
that's it. You know what I mean? It's all about getting entertained and having and watching a good movie and having fun. So, Mark, it is always a pleasure to bring you on, man. I have so much fun talking to you about this stuff,
Same.
Star Wars, horror movies. If you want to get
I
Mark
love it.
on Twitter at _Barnabas, man, is there anything you want to add before we go?
I just want to give you a special thank you. Thank you so much for having me on again. I've really, they things have been upside down,
Yeah.
at home the last few weeks. My wife's been really sick, so I really appreciate you having me on here. This has been great.
Oh, no problem, dude. Anytime. Just hey, let me know when you want to come on. We'll do something for sure. I love having guests
Sounds
on.
good.
You know what I mean, and having
Sounds
fun.
good.
That's what this format's for. It's to have fun. And
Exactly.
I hope your wife gets better so she can root for King Kong. But
Exactly.
hopefully she'll get better and tell her take care, man.
Will do.
I'll talk to you on Twitter later. Again, at @Barnabas. You can get him there on Twitter. Always a pleasure to have you on, man. You have a good night.
You too. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.